guys. Just give us a couple more minutes. The guest has not arrived. I am hoping we're not having some technical difficulties. Just give us a couple more seconds. All right, so I'm not exactly sure what's going on with my guest. So I'm going to get started here because this is a topic that I really want to talk about regardless, but I'm hoping that they figure out their stuff and are able to get themselves logged in. So, but in the meantime, I'm going to introduce myself, introduce the show, and then if I can get them on here, good. And if not, we'll have to reschedule. We'll see. But my name is Deanna. You're in the Laughter After Trauma show. And I'm a speaker, educator, and coach. And I try to bring light and lightness to the heavy topic of trauma. I'm a thriver after intimate partner violence, and that is what led me to coaching and to finding the laughter after. So the idea of this show is just to let everyone see, because I believe that we are all magic and that we all have the power to heal, and it's already inside of us. And so what I'd like to do with the show is bring people on the show that actually can shed light on that and share and show us that if we can, you can, and we're not alone in this, battles, struggles, world of trauma that we've experienced. And at this point, I don't think any of us have escaped some level of trauma. So, with that, we like to share the laughter after. So the topic that I wanted to discuss today, it has to do with postpartum depression. And I really think that this is a topic that is actually not discussed enough, and it's not shared enough. As a matter of fact, it's also probably not given the proper attention. In other words, it's minimized. And so with this, I think about when we're dealing with this after pregnancy and just kind of how our bodies are pretty much run and our emotions and all kinds of things. It's pretty much dictated by hormones. Hormones are the directors in the traffic of our bodies. And pregnancy has an onslaught of that already. Then after you give birth, you have this big shift and transition. And we've been talking a lot about transitions on the show lately. The last couple of times I had a coach on with me, we've been talking about transitions because the moving through those transitions tends to be pretty complex. We have at times at which we have to really sit with ourselves and give ourselves some grace and give ourselves some space in order to move through the transitions. And that probably cannot be any more true than in the transition after you have a baby. And if you really took the time in postpartum to just be and have people say, wait on you and, be with the baby and do the bonding and really rest and heal, it would be great. But the problem is, most of us don't live in a world where we can actually take that type of time. And then on top of it, there is this issue of postpartum depression, is as it's termed, which is dealing with that hormonal fluctuation that happens after you have the baby that is completely out of your control and yet takes over. And it can be very debilitating. And in some instances, when you're dealing with transitions in life, and this is true of any transition in life, when you're dealing with those transitions in life, you will come across a time in which that transition brings up or triggers something from your past or from your childhood that compounds what is happening emotionally for you. So, especially when you have a baby, is this true? Because you may not have even thought about some of the childhood traumas you've experienced, but then when you have this child in your arm and you realize, oh my goodness, this is the responsibility that I have on me right now, it may trigger or bring up some things that you experienced during childhood that maybe you hadn't addressed. And so that's what we were going to be talking about today with this guest, and hopefully we can figure it out and they can get on. But the trauma that you experience in childhood will definitely be something that you consider in the transition of having a child. So I'm going to go into a for instance that I've experienced in my personal life. And that is, I not only come from intimate partner violence, and I did not experience this as a child growing up. Okay. This is not something that my parents had or something that they went through. But on my mom's side of the family, there is some history in this area. And I do believe epigenetically it creates predispositions. And even though I didn't experience it inside of my household, the beliefs that you're raised with in the way that you approach a relationship, what are your roles inside of the relationship, what's okay and what's not okay as far as treatment inside of a relationship, all becomes part of that internalization. And then you have a child. So moving forward from that, when I went through my divorce and I was getting out of that situation, a person stepped in to say, hey, I'm going to help out, be friends with the kids, da da da. And he wound up manipulating and molesting my daughter. So bringing this fully forward, when she had her children, it brought up all kinds of things. So for the first child, who she had when she was much younger, it was just this very protective mode and taking all the classes, making sure you understand the signs, making sure you're very aware and all of these things. And it was very therapeutic for her to go through that. It actually shifted her into becoming a teacher. And so those type of things. And then there was a 7-year gap. And then she had her daughter. And so her first child was a boy. So having a girl brought up even different things. And when my niece reached the age that she was when this started, like the grooming started, she looked at that age and there was a transition happening there from my niece going into her teenage years. And my daughter recognizing that and relating it and understanding it from a trauma standpoint. And so I think that what I'm saying here is every time we have a life event, really, we can deal with trauma on these levels that impact us and shift. And we have to be aware that those things happen. Because if we are aware that those things happen, we can be somewhat prepared for it. No, I'm not saying you can be prepared for postpartum depression. It's really not anything that you do or didn't do that allows this to be your situation, right? But there are steps that you can take in that, and part of those are the awareness. So if this is something that comes up for you in your postpartum depression, you're also recognizing that you have childhood trauma that maybe you didn't even realize you had, or it hasn't been addressed. Then now is the time, even inside of that, to take the space and tap into whatever tools that you can have. It doesn't matter where you turn for this. You should definitely seek a professional when you're dealing with your postpartum depression. And you should also seek out different ways in which you can support your body naturally by, there are IV therapies, there's somatic therapy, EMDR. There are so many different categories that allow us to explore and understand and recognize where we can turn for these things. And one of the biggest issues, or I guess biggest tools that you can use in your toolbox when it comes to this, is giving yourself the grace and the permission to have the breakdowns. So we fight, I think by nature, we fight the breakdown, thinking other parents do this. Why can't I? Something's wrong with me. And the truth of the matter is that's not the case. What you technically need is support. We all go through some level of this. And for me, I didn't have much with my first child, and with my second child, I had it a little bit more. I didn't have it to an extent that it was debilitating, but I definitely had it to the extent that I didn't really feel like I wanted to bond with my daughter right after she was born, and for some time after that. And so it is interesting to really take a step back and look at that and go, okay, here's what I'm experiencing. Now, what can I do? What can I do? What is in my power to do? So, as with anything, I think being aware of that is step one. And step two is also giving yourself permission and giving yourself some grace to know that it is not something that is your fault. So oftentimes when we're going through this type of thing, we start to become very critical. And adding the critic to the already imbalance, it just compounds, as opposed to actually getting you on a path that could lead you to something that is, productive or healing. And like I said at the beginning, I truly believe that we all have in us what we need to heal. We are created the way we are supposed to be. We are meant for good and great things. And so we need to learn how to tap into that. And it doesn't mean we don't need external help to do that. So some of the modalities that are out there that work are, and I don't know if you guys have heard of biohacking, but this is something that I think could be explored in this arena, because the support that you get through some of the IV therapies, like using NAD to help, ramp up the structures that you need in your body. And I don't pretend to know everything there is to know about this. This is kind of an emerging thing anyway. But I do know that the clarity you get and the functionality that it gives you on a cellular, especially in your brain, it allows things to actually start working properly, balancing themselves, and finding that homeostasis. And that is some of that's kind of on a supplemental level, I guess you could say. But then there are also those therapies like simply meditating, maybe tapping into someone who knows NLP so that you can um, get some cognition around what you're going through. Working with your doctor to make sure that they can help balance those hormones and give you some pointers as to what would help to balance that out, because let's face it, that's what it is. It's a very severe hormonal imbalance. And then actually taking a look at where some of the trauma may be coming up, and then tapping into therapies that can help you through that. And I know that somatic is really good, EMDR is really good. I mean, just regular CBT is good as well, as far as being able to talk things through with someone, but don't try to just stand alone in this. Thanks for coming up, Shauna. Is there something that you wanted to add to the conversation? And would you like to come to camera? I'm more than happy to have you on. Did you raise your hand? Because that's the other thing. There's a mute button. I don't know if you're trying to talk. Oh, up. Okay. That was like a oopsie. Anyway, so with that being said, I think that most of us here, and I don't know if there, I see Matthew in the audience, and the reason I had a couple coming on today is because I wanted to bring some awareness of this to the men in our lives, because that's our first line of support that I think we need. And having the support of your partner and the father of your child will really create a different level of bonding that allows you to heal and to move towards that healing. And that, so I appreciate Matthew being here, and Deanna, the other Deanna in the audience. And believe me, you guys, if you have questions or you have something to add to this conversation, please raise your hand and come up, because I would like to just go ahead and make it into a conversation. This is not my normal time, so the audience is a little low, but my guest is also apparently having some technical difficulties. And so they couldn't get on. So I don't know what's happening there. But I'd still think that this is a very, very important topic, and that he's saying he doesn't see the links to Fireside anywhere. Oh, goodness. All right, you guys give me a second for pause so I can send him the link. I didn't think he needed a link, but all right, I'm gonna send him the link. Let's see. I think I can share this out this way, broadcast to the world. He's really new to this platform, and so it's probably that. So it's ooh, the traffic is really loud outside. Okay, sorry about that, guys. Okay, so let's see if this is helpful at all for him, because I don't know what he's. Anyway, oh, live shows, they're so much fun. So anyway, so what I was saying in this is that I think it's really important that the that you approach this situation, especially when it comes to postpartum, but even childhood trauma, you need to approach it from a partnership standpoint. It really needs to come. You need to come at it with both of the people ready and willing that it'll take to walk through this this um, this phase in life. And it happens, and you will walk through it, and you will come out the other end. And that's one of the things that I want to share on the show too, because it is important for all of us to recognize that, hey, I've been there, you've been there, and lots of others have been there. And that's not to minimize it, but it is to say that you can do it. You can do it just like the rest of us have done it. We don't all have some kind of special power that you don't have, right? So being able to walk through that together is going to create a different bond. And that's what I was getting ready to get at when I got distracted. Oh, hey, Mike. I've been talking a little bit about this because I was trying to figure out how to get you guys on here. I didn't know you didn't realize that you just needed to log into the app. So, welcome. You guys are immediately on the stage. So, just so you know that, and your mic is unmuted. So, if you need a second to kind of get it together, just let me know. All right. So I don't hear them yet. So we'll see. Um, so anyway, what I was getting ready to say on the topic of being able to do this together is that not only will it help, not only does the support help to walk you through this, but doing it together will also create a stronger bond between you and your partner as well, because that bond is important. It also helps to create a stronger bond with your child as well, because there is a very big shared responsibility for making sure that the child is being nurtured and cared for while you're going through this process. So it all of it combined really helps if you have the support to the surrounding you. And I get it. Some of us might find ourselves in a situation where we're alone in this, and I understand that, and it makes it a lot harder. Tap into whatever your support circle is. It doesn't matter, because I do believe that most of us do have some people in our corner, whether that is family members, whether that is friends, or it is the person that we are in a relationship with. But specifically, if you're dealing with compounded issues that you're working through, um, make sure you're in a safe space and with someone that's trusted, right? Because we don't want to rely on the places or feel like the only place we have to turn is the place where we had the trauma. So you always want to make sure that you're coming into the support by really, really checking that and making sure you're with a trusted, whether it's your partner, friend, whatever. Mike, you just let me know when you're ready by unmuting and just say, hey, we're ready whenever you are. And we'll cut to some conversation with you guys. I know it might take you a second to get it set up. I apologize. I sent out the emails and I figured that I know y'all are new to this, so it's fine. Hey, you're muted right now, so there you
All
go.
right. Sorry.
That's okay. Hey,
Absolute chaos
Sarah.
on our
You
end.
you guys can turn your phone sideways too if you want. It does work both ways.
Okay.
It'll flip.
All
Or
right. Cool.
it should flip. Right now it's not flipping for me.
Well, we'll stay. That's
All
right.
right. All right. I don't know why it's not rotating. That's just anyway. Look, live shows and there we go. It's okay because I'm really good at talking. So,
Good to
but
see
I'm
you.
glad
Sorry
you
we're late, everybody. This
Oh,
was
it's
crazy
you
on
know,
our end. Yeah.
you know what? It's fine. It's earlier than normal. The crowd is not huge. A lot of people will be probably catching this on the replay. That's fine. Not to, diminish what's happening in the audience. I'm hoping some of the people here will get up and ask some questions, but um, I'm not going to go too long. I'm going to introduce you guys real fast, just so that people know. Mike is a business architect and he is one of my mentors, and I've worked with him a couple of times in masterminds. And not to sound weird because his wife is sitting next to him, but I love you. So there's that. And his wife,
Oh,
That's
I think, would
lovely.
understand.
That's
Right. I
wonderful.
said, I think she, right. I'm like, I think she'd understand it with the work he does. But anyway, and so, and then Sarah, I feel like, like I don't know you, but just knowing the type of person Mike is and reading some of your posts because I had to stalk you a little bit. I feel like I kind of know you. You know what I mean?
Aw.
So it's good to see your face. Um, and what I wanted to talk about today on the show, and I know this is something that you guys are really passionate about, and Mike has kind of gotten all into the biohacking side of this, but I wanted to bring up the issue of dealing with postpartum and that pulling up the traumas that you've had in the past from childhood. And you don't have to tell all your stories. I know you don't mind talking. I know that you're pretty vocal, but it's not about focusing on the stories, that the bad stuff. I really want to hear, like, as this hit you and you guys needed to, you started recognizing this, how you approached it and came through it. That's kind of really more of what I'd love to hear. The laughter after the trauma.
Well,
Oh,
from my
it's a big question, right?
from my end, I'll just start us off. I wasn't really that understanding at first, and I'm a positive mindset dude, and I'm like, oh, what's just interrupt your patterns and all that stuff. But it's really a lot's happening underneath the surface. And when Sarah can only eat gummy worms for like 3 months, and like during pregnancy and then after pregnancy, we were both kind of struggling to get out of bed, and we were just exhausted, and it was a rough season, and I have a lot more empathy and grace now for women and for anyone going through that journey. But Sarah had it especially hard. But I'll let you share.
Yeah, no, everything you're saying is true. I think I wasn't prepared. Everyone tries to prepare you, but there's no way you can be fully prepared for what happens. And I witnessed my mother birth 10 children and sort of bounced back every single time. And I thought, I've got this. It's in my genes. Not in my genes. Nope. I threw up every single day except for 1 week when I was pregnant for 9 months, and couldn't drive in the car 5 minutes without having to stop by the side of the road. It was just horrible. It was horrible. And after 36-hour labor, gave birth to my daughter, and I was so happy. We were thrilled beyond belief, but it was terrifying. It was a really scary thing. And then they send you home with this baby. Good luck. Try not to kill the baby.
Right.
Still alive.
She's still alive. She's doing great.
Nothing like learning on the job. I'm just saying.
Nothing like learning on the job. I can tell you, there's not enough preparation for that. No.
Right. Well, the thing is, you knew how to change a diaper.
Yeah.
So there's that.
There was that.
Right? Okay. When you have a lot of siblings and you have big families, that's one thing you get to learn real easy. So, but I know that okay, I got so many questions. All right. So one of my questions is this, okay? My daughter, and I'm going to be very blunt here. You can talk about whatever you want, and you can also say, I ain't talking about anything, and it's fine. You can tell me to shut up. But I'm going to come from her experience, and Mike knows this about me. I come from an abusive relationship with my marriage, but then when we came out of that, the person who was stepping in to help things out actually wound up manipulating my children, introducing drugs, and molested my daughter. And he was an in-law, right? And so for her, now, thankfully, she didn't deal a whole lot with postpartum depression, but still for her, those transitions and those phases, when you come home with a child and you go, okay, now I'm responsible for this life and bringing this child up and protecting this child and safely guiding this child through navigating these waters, right? How do I want to do that? And know what to look for and how, and look, we all look at our parents and go, I'm going to do this thing, but I hated the way they did that, so I'm not doing that. And we all kind of do that. But when you have a traumatic experience in that childhood, it's a very different way of dealing. So now, like for her coming out of it, and I know that you've had some childhood traumas. I don't know the details. I've just read some of your posts. Really, that's all I know. So I know that you have some of that in fundamental bringing upbringings and choosing how you want to raise your child, but you're dealing with that in the middle. For you, you really had a deep postpartum depression. You had a lot to deal with. I'm sure you're not fully out of it, really, because it takes a long time. So
Yes, that's true.
tell me some of the things you guys did, because I know you guys went through a lot of alternative things that y'all worked through to maybe try to support your body and
Mhm.
your emotions through that, if you don't mind sharing it.
Oh, absolutely. Well, we got to the place where I was just like, I'm not going to make it. If I want to see my daughter to her second birthday, we need to get help. And I think for me, I'm, very stubborn. I, come from this background of you can do it, you can do all the things, you never need to ask for help. And I've lived through really hard things, lots of trauma. And so it took a lot for me to get to the point where I was like, I can't do this anymore. We started ketamine treatments, then we went to NAD plus, and those were really pivotal for me. They are, intravenous treatments, bypasses, the digestive tract, goes straight through the blood-brain barrier. It was an instant boost, which I really needed for my brain to start functioning properly. It was that hand up. Then I began well, I actually had already been doing, but I started diving into more somatic therapy, which is body therapy. We have a lot of traditional therapy which deals cognitively with the issues that our childhood and all of these things, but it's top down, and the top down method sometimes doesn't work when you're dealing with traumas that have stored in the body, which I found
Hmm.
after having a baby started surfacing, because that's such an organic bodily experience, so powerful. It pulls out, as you know, everything, and then you're sitting here looking at a little mirror of yourself like, I can't screw this up. I don't want her to experience what I experienced, but how and where, and all of those thoughts, in addition to your hormones going like crazy. It's a lot. It's a
Hmm.
tsunami. And I'm actually shocked that more people aren't talking about this, frankly. It blows my mind.
And that's the reason why I pressed you guys, kept bugging Mike. I'm like, come on, this is so important. We need to talk about it. And I know you guys are super busy, and I get it, but I was just like, God, we just need to get this conversation recorded because people need to know that this is not being given the attention that it needs to be given, not on the medical front. I feel the same way about menopause, trust me, and I'm in a different place than you, like opposite place than you, but I feel the same way about this. I am working and killing myself to really try to get through this. And there is the emotional part, but there is this weight that I've never had on me. There is these things that are happening hormonally that are impacting my body,
Mm-hmm.
and I can't find the balance internally, which I've never had a problem doing before.
No.
And so so I know what you're saying. I dealt with some postpartum after my second child, but my first kid, thank God I didn't, because my birthing experience was not pretty. So, but you look like you got the double whammy, right? Like a 36-hour birth. I was 31 hours, so I get it. And I wound up in a C-section.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so when so I was going in for natural, wound up in a section, then you already feel like a failure. You feel like you hurt your kid. The drugs that are going into your body. His heart rate started going down afterwards. So he was in distress, and all of that is going on. But then, afterwards, everything kind of flowed.
Mhm.
So, but you kind of got the double whammy because you got a long birth, which is exhausting, which means you start off with a big sleep deficit, which you were probably already sleep deprived going through the way
Mhm.
you experienced the
Well,
pregnancy. And then on top of that, you had the postpartum.
mhm.
And again, like you said, I don't think people talk about it enough. I think doctors dismiss it as, oh, you'll get over it. This is just mood swings.
Right.
It's not just mood swings. No, it's not. It's way more than that. And I think that, like you said, it's just not talked about. Like people just kind of get through it and they go. Go ahead, Mike. You had something to
I
add?
think, I mean, also, so she was triggered into depression, anxiety, and PTSD. I mean, she'd have 3 or 4 panic attacks a week, that would be pretty severe sometimes. And that was, I'd say that part was 6 to 9 months of really intense season. And then, so I had to learn how to handle trauma. I'm still learning. Like, I had to get up to speed real quick because,
Hmm.
hey, this is the same stuff that works on a normal person does not work on her. And I'm like, what the freak do I do with this scenario? And just also looking for a solution, because in the dark moments you're like, hey, all right, we're normally a high performing couple, we're normally like, I'm full of energy, I'm hitting snooze 8 times a morning because I'm exhausted, don't want to get out of bed. I'm dragging towards my workouts. I feel like I've aged 5 years in that 1 year. And then like it, but I think at the end of the day, they say great adversity prepares you for an extraordinary destiny. C.S. Lewis had a quote, something along those lines.
Hmm.
And I do believe, like, now we have a whole clinic, I think, that's focused on treating mental health, addiction, fatigue, and aging, all using nutrient-based IV therapy. And those are the 4 biggest problems in health. Like, if you look,
Hmm.
and we can solve, or as close as we can declare, solve and treat and reverse a lot of those issues, and we're doing it for ourselves. Like, I feel like Sarah doesn't always feel this way herself, but I think she's like 70% better since we started the high dose NAD in July. I feel like I'm 32 again, and I'm 43, and so we're getting our life back, and we're getting her back, and it feels great. I mean, and now there's not, like, we can still have anxiety moments or whatever, and like we had one getting on the show.
Oh no, I'm sorry.
It's not your
Look,
fault.
I know, but
This one
but
gets anxious about everything.
I know, and I
So
get it, and you're showing up for something, but I'm super laid back. So I talked, and if it worked, it worked, and if it didn't, we'd have figured it out another time because I wouldn't have given up on this conversation, to be perfectly honest. But
yeah,
I'm really laid back. You get to 50 something years old, you just go with the flow. It's fine and it's live. And so there's not much you can do about it. So, but, here's the thing. Here's another question I wanted to ask you. And yes, Mike, it is very different. And I've said this a lot because even working, like, you're familiar with ULA, and even working with that and having that as part of one of my certifications and stuff like that, not everybody gets what it means when you're working with trauma. It's
yeah,
not the same. The time is not the same. Like I've heard a bunch of times, the guys will go, oh, if you have to take more than 30 minutes on a coaching call, you're not coaching right. I'm like, you've never dealt with trauma.
Oh,
yeah,
wow. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You've just never dealt with it. Never dealt with having to sit with a person crying who can't get words out and just be with that person and let an energy exchange between you two so that my energy can pull that energy down.
yeah,
You don't know what that is, and you don't really know what that's like, and so it's different. And so you have to understand that part of it. And when you're used to functioning at this level, and then
Mhm.
all of a sudden you're at this level, or one is here and one is here, and you guys are rocking, right? It's difficult. But I need to ask this because Mike, for me, looking at it from this side, I saw you at Sonnet all the time. I saw the pictures.
yeah.
Sometimes she was around. And so how did this, going through this, first of all, I want to know from Sarah how the support really helped, knowing that Sonnet was being cared for if you couldn't be the one handling it and Mike was there doing it. But how did you feel that changed the way you bonded with Sonnet as well? Because sometimes that bond is not, most dads will start their bonding, their true bonding, when the kids start walking. So it usually starts happening around one, because before that, they're not the one, especially if you're breastfeeding, they're not the ones doing all the work. So the bonding with the mom usually happens first, and then it's different. It's just different. But how do you feel like that was in your scenario and how things went there?
I think that it was very relieving to see him spending so much time with her, and it allowed me the space I needed to get into therapy, to start the yoga, to do all the things that I did. It's needed, and I couldn't have done it without him. But yes, there was the piece that it was healing, because I have a lot of what you might be called daddy issues. And I don't really know my father to this day, and so just seeing him be with her and be so loving and present was I mean, the gift of a lifetime. Very healing. Yeah.
Yeah. It helped her relax, but it was hard. I savor the moments because, hey, as an entrepreneur, there's going to be plenty of seasons where I'm less present, but I was like, I'm going to savor, even as hard as this is and exhausted as I am, like holding her, taking her on walks at 4 a.m. when she would wake up in the middle of the night and just screaming her head off. I'd run outside with her in my little pouch shirt.
Yeah, the little shirt with the pouch in
Yeah.
it, and you can
Oh, right. I love
Yeah.
that.
right to sleep.
Yeah. So, and I just kept on, like, I'm super determined as well. And I was like determined that I'm going to get her back, help her get back to normal. I'm going to get back to normal as well. But we just got to, sometimes the victory is in living another day. And we got to be
Yes.
obsessed with, hey,
So
I'm not
this,
going to crush it in everything today.
all right, and this is something I learned from you, Mike, and I'm going to reverse it a little bit. So when we first started working together, it was, you were very adamant about you can have bad moments, but you can't have bad days and bad weeks and bad months and bad years.
Yeah.
But also, you also need to be able to flip that and not say that you're not going to do it that way. What I'm saying is you also have to recognize that you're going to have those times of space that you need.
Yeah.
You're going to have those times where things slow down and you can't keep the pace. And you have to give yourself that as well to be able to continue or grow and support together, but not at the pace that you're used to, right? You said it before, you're high performance, right? You guys are go-getters, and that's great, but a kid will definitely give you that
Yeah,
little
your
hiccup.
performance will go down in every way.
Well, they have a really good way of letting you face reality and bringing it into a different focus. Kids have a really good way of doing that without trying, like they just show up in the world and that's how it happens,
Yeah.
But in there, do those moments, because I remember watching some of them, I think that they were probably mostly in your stories, like on Instagram or whatever, but in those moments, did you feel like not only were you having the bonding moments that you needed, but you were also able to support Sarah because you were able to like maybe let her sleep when she was actually finally sleeping or whatever, which ways did you think that really helped her too?
Yeah, that was a big piece of it, is just creating space for her to get rest and renewal whenever we could grab windows, and just knowing, hey, I'm not gonna nail it in my business for a little bit, and as long as we can survive and make it to the next season, we'll be okay. And as long it's like the cost of us not being in an integrated family were far greater if we didn't make it through that season intact and then coming out in a better spot. But it was scary and it was rough, and I'd say that was the most intense season probably of my entrepreneurial journey. Even going through like losing $1 million, like that was a rougher season, emotionally, mentally, physically.
But I
You know,
think what you said was, if I may, what you said about, was it either you, Deanna, or you, Michael, I don't know, about not about looking at the day as like, okay, I'm not going to nail it today, or it's not going to be, awesome today. Maybe that's okay. It's about getting through. I think that was a pivotal like shift for me because I tend to be very broad thinking and like, oh, I'm seeing this pattern of like me not being able to make it and me having all these mental struggles and stuff for the next year, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm not going to make it. And it gets so overwhelming. But when you just look at it like, okay, today, okay, no, today's too much. Okay, how about the next 2 hours? Okay, the next 2 hours are too much for me to think about. What about the next 20 minutes, the next 5 minutes? And just smaller and smaller and smaller until I'm right here in this moment and I'm okay in this moment and I can make it through this moment. I'm breathing through this moment. And then pretty soon the day is gone and it's the next day. And soon our daughter is 15 months like she is now. And she's so much easier and we're in such a better place. But I think for me, that was a really powerful shift.
Right. And that's kind of what I was saying about reversing it, like not having moment, like
Right.
having allowing a bad moment, but not it escalating. But you got to kind of reverse that down and saying also sometimes I can only have this moment. I got to
Right.
just
Yeah.
go in, I got to just be in this moment. And when I get through this one, I'll deal with the next one and I'll expand. So it kind of, works both ways depending on what you need. And again, in trauma, and I get this, like when you go through, and this is going to come up for you. So this is just a warning because nobody probably ever told you this, but now you've already experienced this to this is a big, a big extent. And it won't be, hopefully like this great every time you experience something. But what's going to happen, and you're going to notice this, is that as phases come through, this is going to resurface, right? In different phases of your life, or life events. It happens in transitions. And I feel like trauma happens a lot. It comes up a lot in transitions. And we've been talking a lot about transitions on the show because we're in a transition right now. Kids are going to school, seasons are changing. Mercury's always and forever going back into retrograde. It's just, I'm just saying my life. Anyway, so,
Is that what
you
makes
know,
women go crazy? The
oh,
Mercury in
that's,
retrograde?
I think men would make women go crazy. No, I'm teasing. I don't know.
Yes.
I
Yes.
don't know. We're
Yes.
pretty.
I mean, I do believe that planetary pulls, planetary movements. I mean, women are really actually, men are too, but because of our cycles affected by moon cycles, all of that really does have a play in the functioning and the things that go on. But to my point here, getting a little off topic, but to my point here is transitions bring up the trauma because you see it. So like for this, with this instance, having a baby brought back all this childhood stuff that you were like, what the heck? I have to make sure this doesn't happen. I
Those
have to
weren't the
make
words
sure
they were using.
well, it's not a family show. You can use whatever word you want here, but my words, my words. But anyway, so, and you find yourself like that. But then what's going to happen here, like, let's say you have another kid, or let's say, when Sonnet becomes a teenager, you are going to revisit, not necessarily revisit the trauma, but you are going to revisit these places that make you question things. It's just going to pull up. So just being aware of that and understanding that now and knowing, okay, it's not that trauma is not a one and done. Like, oh, okay, good, I got it, I know what I'm doing. It is
Yeah.
that you already have the tools you need now, right? And you know what tools you need, and you may need to add to those tools, but you need to also just be aware that, sometimes this may resurface and it won't be as harsh every time, but it'll be something that you have to work through. And I mean, of course, now that you've done it, it'll be a little bit easier the next time, but there's a different understanding, that comes about with it. And I know that for my daughter, this has been a process, and my trauma is different from her trauma. I just compare it to her because I'm in a different phase of life and she's kind of in a similar phase as you guys, having kids and, your marriage is fairly young, right? You guys have been together how long? I mean, married. I know y'all probably been together longer than that, but y'all have
Well,
been
we've been
married
married
what?
like 4
4
years.
years together, almost 8.
Right. So, those seasons will 7, 8, whatever. So those, you're like, I
Yeah,
don't know.
I always know to the day. He's always like, "Is it 7? Is it 8? Is it 9?" Yeah,
Seems like forever.
And
forever.
she's like January 26th. No, I mean, yeah. So, but anyway, but so those are things that, even with those things that they will always be evolving, and as those transitions and phases change, or life events comes, or the different phases that you go through in life, you will notice that this is kind of going to come back to the surface. And
Right.
so having some tools, having things like saying, okay, I have a window of tolerance. This is where I can live right now. And maybe my window gets bigger, but being able to have language for that, so that you can say, look, right now this is outside of my window. Persimmon, find a word, I don't know, but saying, but so that you can communicate it to Mike, right? Like, everybody in the world doesn't need to know, but if you're in a place and you get overwhelmed and you say, you know what, I'm getting outside of my window, he knows what that means, and he can be supportive, and then you guys can work on, so it's just having those type of tools in your toolbox. So, um last
And
question for
I'll,
me, and go
yeah,
ahead.
I was just going to add, one of the beautiful things about what's happening right now is there are so many innovations happening in trauma. Psilocybin can help eradicate someone's struggle with depression after one full treatment. NAD, we're seeing significant, massive effects. I would say when we do the six treatments in high dose, and we're gonna add ketamine. Then you add like neurofeedback, somatic psychotherapy. Therapy is really advanced. A lot of things they're going to replace and reduce our need for pharmaceuticals as well, but also finally truly not just treat a symptom, but treat the underlying brain patterns, because your brain changes in trauma, and you can restore your brain. You can come back to better than normal in many regards, and so like I think we're in a pioneering age in mental health, and it's a perfect timing because like so many Americans and people across the world have battled mental health. 30.4% of Americans battled depression in the last 2 years, according to APA, American Psychological Association. So it's a big deal, and it's exciting. And I think anyone that hears this in replay or in future is like, man, do not give up. Look for
Right.
solutions, but also do not accept whatever the typical solution is. If it
Yeah,
feels
learn to go
insufficient,
beyond.
yeah.
Yeah, and that was going to be my next question, because really, when we talk about, like, finding gratitude in the not so good things. So, like, right, like, it's easy to be grateful for the things that went well. It's easy to be grateful for having a little bundle of joy and a daughter in your arms. It's easy to be grateful for that. It's not easy to be grateful for all the crap that you go through, or whatever has happened since then, or the trauma that you experienced because that came up, or none. It's hard to be grateful for those things, but looking at it from the outside in, after you've kind of processed through it some, you start to see, okay, but here's the lessons, and this is where it brought me. And I feel like this journey was not that I'm not a believer, okay, and I don't know, I hope I don't offend you, I'm not a believer that you got put in this situation so that you could be this. I don't think that we are meant to be put through the torturous things that we are put through. I do believe, though, however, that we are people who rise, and we are people who, in those places of fire, we find the diamonds, right? And I think that's what kind of came out of this, is that you went into, you through some of this stuff, you dove into this biohacking and these different things. I mean, obviously, I want to just say, make sure that when you are approaching these type of therapies, you do it with care, like under the supervision like this. Go to a place that has the IV therapies and does it. Don't just go out and eat mushrooms. I'm just saying, please, people, just, do it responsibly so that you know that you're getting the dosage and the right
Yeah.
treatment. I don't want to be the person on here where people, are like, oh, she told me I could just go do psilocybin. Bye. But you know what I'm saying. But do it responsibly, because we do know that we have these receptors and we are made. They are made. We're made to be able to assimilate this stuff, and it wouldn't be there if it wasn't supposed to be,
Right.
utilized. And so I do think that there's a lot to be said about that. So do you feel like in this journey, and I know it's not like all over, but do you feel like in this journey that it has led you to a place that you're like, yay, I'm actually glad to be in this place, even though I didn't really want to go through what we went through. Here we are. And I think that this is something that I can actually contribute, right? To, I mean,
Yeah.
a bigger contribution, really, beyond yourself.
For sure. For sure. I think we can look back and see how all of it had to happen for us to reach these places of wanting to help other people with in the ways that we've been helped. And we wouldn't have the empathy, certainly not that needed empathy to help other people. We wouldn't. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a great gift at the end of the day, and we've made the most of it. I mean, we could have done something else as well, but I think this is, I'm not going to waste the lemons, and make lemonade out of the lemons, um, and then you look at, I mean, the anti-aging, the fatigue levels that we were battling, they were severe, and the mental health. I mean, Sarah's experienced really severe levels of trauma, and that was triggered in the child, in the pregnancy and postpartum stages. And I feel like now we're equipped to help so many others. And like literally, I wrote down the other day a goal to help 100,000 people in mental health or
Mm-hmm.
addiction. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, we're going to take our brand across the nation. Already open in Texas later this year, and we'll serve. Fingers crossed by the end of November, we'll serve 200 people the month of November,
That's
and
awesome. Come
then
to New Orleans.
yeah. So it's going to be a crazy journey, but it's needed. So
Yeah, I agree. I agree, and I do think that in the process, and like I said, like I don't think that oh gosh, this was meant for you, but I do think that when we experience these things, and you come through it the way you guys have, that everybody around you benefits. Everybody in your world will be benefiting from this and beyond, right? Because you're able to now kind of go, okay, yeah, so this is how it worked and this is what happened. And we're going to be able to charge forward to be able to educate others and help. You're doing it where you're actually treating.
yeah,
So that's incredible to me. So, yeah.
yeah. Thank you.
Uh, so listen, before we wrap up, because I know I don't want to keep you guys too long, I just want to put out here, we have some folks in the audience. If you guys have questions and you'd like to come up, whether it's questions about what they went through, or if it's questions, because we have a lot of guys out here right now, if it's questions about how to be that type of support, or if it's questions about the biohacking stuff, because Mike is the man to talk to about that, because I don't know all of that stuff, only a little bit. I mean, um, you guys can come up and take this chance to ask you questions. If you have any, I don't know. A lot of times people are shy, so I don't know if it's
Yeah.
shy.
Well, and if no one has questions as well, I'll mention a couple of things. If you're battling or dealing with any anxiety, PTSD, trauma, depression, I mean, besides looking at NAD and ketamine, because those will have an immediate noticeable effect. Like I have people every day that we treat that, and they're high performers, too. So it's all ranges. They could be young 26 to multimillionaire at 60. And ironically, according to LinkedIn Learning, CEOs are twice as likely to battle depression than the ordinary person as well. So um, it's nothing to be ashamed about, but there's solutions. Also, if you're helping someone cope through that, what helped me was reading the book Healing Trauma, The Body Keeps the Score, What Happened to You by Oprah, as well. Listen to some podcasts. But there's solutions and there's answers, um, and there's also a chance for you to become a better human in that journey. I'm a better human now because of suffering refines you, and what we went through was pretty rough, and I'm glad we're. I wouldn't say all the way done. We're mostly on the other side of it, and it feels great.
Yeah.
Anything else on
And one
that?
last
Yeah.
I have one last question for you, Sarah, too, and then if you have something to add after this. I know that you have like a creative outlet side, and you do some writing, correct? Am I right about this? Yes. So
Very much.
what part did that play in being able for helping you to process through things on the creative side? Did you tap into that, or did you feel
Oh, I
like
did.
you
I did.
okay?
Yes. It was a lifeline for me. I mean, I've been writing since I was 12 years old, and professionally since I was 18, so for a minute now. And I turned to it not for career reasons, but because it was saving me. And
Mhm.
so I wrote poetry all through the night when I was pregnant with my baby. I wrote poetry after she was born. I wrote poetry in the darkest nights, and really worked even on my memoir, which is more of a 5-year project. I touched pieces of my story that were so painful. But when you're in the depths of despair, it's like, why not? Why not spill it on the screen? And even in doing it, it sort of validated my experience, and being like, yeah, that did happen, and helped me to stop gaslighting myself to see it written. So yeah, it was extremely cathartic for me, and I highly recommend anyone. You don't have to be a professional writer; it could just be for you. Nobody may see it except for you and your eyeballs, but it's so powerful, and you may never even pick it up again. You may never look at it again after you've written it down. But there's something about setting your pen to paper and letting your emotions process through that pen that is so powerful. Yes, I highly recommend it.
Yeah, and I love that you brought up the fact that writing also helped you recognize it validated your experiences and you stopped gaslighting yourself. So I think that a lot of people do this. Again, we're not only our own worst critic, we are our own worst doubters, we're our own worst everything, technically, when it
Mhm.
comes to that
Yeah.
internal dialogue. And we have to actually reprogram it, which I love about NLP. I don't know if you've heard of brain core therapy, but I've heard that that has done some really good work. And then, Dr. Amen talks about all kinds of stuff too, where he talks about brain health is mental health, brain health is mental health. And so that things like NAD and ketamine that work in that regard too. So it's just really, it's fascinating. I think, like you said, it's a very new frontier, but I think it is the future for sure.
Yeah.
So, but I love that because I not only write, but even when I'm doing other things, I tend to doodle. And I'm actually going to have like a professional doodler. Like that's what she does for a living. And she does like retreats and classes like that and teaches people, how to use that as a release.
I love that.
So yeah, it's the neatest thing. So anyway, she'll be on my show next week. So I just thought, I
That's
wanted
so
to ask you that.
cool.
Yeah, so come visit us. You need to get your own fireside account.
Apparently.
Apparently, fireside. Who knew? So, but yeah, so I just wanted to know because I think that a lot of people really, we all have the ability to write. We don't need to be a writer. We all have the ability to doodle. You don't have to be an artist. These are
Right.
just creative expressions, and it allows things to get out of here and onto something else. And when you do that, it's interesting how that much is a release that actually pulls things out of you.
Yeah.
So All right. Let me make sure I have nothing here. So, okay, guys, if you guys don't have any questions, we're going to wrap up here. Mike, I want to thank you. Sarah, thank you for showing up. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Don't worry about the timing. It is no big deal. No apologies. So don't even do it before you start. Just it's fine. And also, if you guys have any links or anything that you want to share, send them to me in the email, because when I do up the show notes for this and it goes out, I can get that into the YouTube, I can get that into the podcast. I'll edit this up and we can put that out there. So if there's anything you want to share, I'll go back and put the books out there that you mentioned. I mean, for me, The Body Keeps the Score was like my Bible for a while, because it's so much. You just recognize so much. And as you read it and read it, it's like, oh, yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
I have this. So, but I'll note that into the show notes as well. So, any last thoughts that you guys want to share?
I think there's a lot of hope, and where there's a lot of breakthroughs happening in the mental health and wellness space, and the aging space, and medical health space. So, man, we want to be on the forefront of those and ride the front end of the waves. But it's an exciting time and hopeful
Yeah.
time. Anything you want to
I agree.
Keep going. If you're struggling with mental health, know that so many people have gone through it, are going through it. You may not see them because there's so much shame around it, but keep going and know that you're loved and you have a special place in the world.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome.
And I like to tell everybody I see you and you are beautiful. I believe that wholeheartedly about you too. I think I'm just blessed to know you guys and be able to say, hey, and watch and know, just see the stuff that's going on. I know that there are big things you guys are doing and it's going to serve such a huge purpose. And so I love that. So that's it. I think that I'm going to wrap up here and just let everybody know that, we'll be back next week. 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, which is our regular time. All right. I'm telling you, the times for me right now. Whew. Anyway. All right. Appreciate you guys. I'm going to bring Wait Bot up. I can turn your camera off if you want me to.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and bounce out. But thanks, Deanna. Have a great one.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Bye.
And really good meeting you, Sarah.
Likewise, Deanna. Thank you.
Oh, you're still there. I just clicked the camera. All right. Y'all have a great day. I appreciate you guys.